Tala's isolation is both self-imposed and socially influenced. From a personal perspective, Tala prefers to focus deeply on her work, immersing herself in engineering problems and machinery rather than social interactions. This preference might stem from her personality or cultural background. Her species values logic, precision, and efficiency above all else. They excel in intellectual pursuits but often lack warmth or emotional expressiveness, especially in social contexts. This lack of social warmth can lead to a natural distance between Tala and her CREWMATEs. At the same time, the isolation is also due to how others perceive and treat her. The crew respects Tala's abilities because she is undeniably brilliant. The starship depends on her technical expertise to keep critical systems running smoothly. However, respect does not always translate to friendship or closeness. The other crew members find Tala intimidating or difficult to approach, possibly because of her serious demeanor or reserved nature. Some may fear rejection, others may feel awkward, and some might simply not share her intense focus on engineering. This creates a barrier. Despite working in the same spaces and sharing the same mission, Tala's relationships are superficial or non-existent. The story paints a vivid picture of Tala working alone in the engineering bay, surrounded by humming machines and glowing consoles, her only company the mechanical sounds and blinking lights. The physical space of the engineering bay becomes a metaphor for her internal emotional landscape, enclosed, technical, and solitary. Her solitude is emphasized by the contrast with the rest of the ship. The Virescent is bustling with activity. Crew members socialize, chat, joke, and share stories in common areas. Tala remains apart from this lively social environment. She has no one sitting beside her during breaks, no one who casually joins her for a meal or a chat. This contrast highlights the depth of her loneliness. Importantly, the narrative shows that Tala does not seem bitter or angry about this isolation. Instead, she has come to accept it as part of her life. She finds comfort in her work and the steady reliability of machines, which do not judge or demand emotional energy. Her identity is wrapped tightly around her role as an engineer and problem solver. This acceptance adds a layer of quiet dignity to her character. Tala is not portrayed as a victim, but as someone who has found her own way to cope. This opening part also sets the tone for the story's emotional arc. It establishes Tala's starting point, a person who is isolated despite her surroundings, and who is defined by logic and detachment. It creates anticipation for change, suggesting that the arrival of the human engineer might disrupt this status quo. The narrative subtly invites the reader to sympathize with Tala's loneliness, even if she does not openly express it. The silence around her is palpable, almost a character itself. This makes the story relatable on a universal level. Many readers have experienced feelings of being alone in a crowd, or misunderstood despite being surrounded by others. Additionally, this part introduces key themes of the story: the contrast between isolation and companionship, the importance of presence without words, and the challenge of bridging cultural and emotional gaps between different species and personalities. Tala's story is not just about an individual's loneliness, but about how connection can form in unexpected ways. In summary, Part 1 lays the groundwork by introducing Tala as a brilliant but solitary engineer on a large multi-species starship, highlighting her preference for work over social interaction and the cultural traits that contribute to her isolation. Describing the ship's social environment as lively yet excluding Tala, emphasizing her solitude. Showing Tala's acceptance of her isolation and finding solace in machines rather than people. Setting up the emotional tone of quiet loneliness that primes the reader for the upcoming changes. Foreshadowing the impact a new character, the human engineer, will have by contrasting Tala's current state with what is to come. The story begins this section with the Virusant docking at a busy space station. This setting is crucial. It represents a moment of transition, a pause in the ship's journey, and an opportunity for external influences to enter the ship's closed ecosystem. The space station is bustling with activity, filled with engineers, traders, and travelers from many worlds. It is here that the human engineer Jack comes aboard, bringing with him fresh energy and a different approach to the ship's repairs. Jack's introduction is understated yet impactful. He has no formal rank or flashy credentials, just a reputation for being able to fix problems others cannot. This highlights a key HFY, humanity, theme. Humans often succeed through practicality, ingenuity, and determination rather than status or technology alone. Jack's presence hints at this human trait, humility combined with competence. From Tala's perspective, Jack stands out immediately. Unlike the other crew members who tend to keep their distance from her, Jack navigates the ship with ease and confidence. This detail emphasizes Jack's approachable personality and adaptability. He doesn't see Tala as unapproachable or intimidating. He simply treats her as a fellow professional. His natural ease aboard the ship also suggests human versatility and social fluidity, traits often celebrated in HFY stories. Their first meeting is brief but significant. Jack greets Tala with a simple nod. No grand introductions or forced small talk. This silent but respectful acknowledgement is telling. It shows Jack's respect for Tala's space and work, signaling that he is not there to disrupt her, but to contribute. Tala's response, barely glancing at him and returning to her work, underscores her guarded nature and preference for solitude. Yet, Jack's decision to sit quietly beside her later marks the beginning of a subtle but meaningful connection. The scene where Jack sits beside Tala in the engineering bay without speaking is pivotal. It is a moment filled with quiet tension and potential. Tala is used to working alone. The arrival of someone next to her, especially without explanation or conversation, is foreign and potentially unsettling. But Jack's wordless presence is non-intrusive. He does not ask questions or demand attention. He simply offers silent companionship. This act of sitting beside her without words challenges Tala's boundaries. It forces her to confront the fact that someone is willing to share her space and work alongside her without needing conversation or superficial social rituals. For Tala, this is a new experience. Companionship that does not come with expectations or emotional demands. This moment also emphasizes a deeper theme. Sometimes, presence alone can be comforting. The story suggests that connection does not always require words. In a noisy, busy environment like a starship filled with many species and languages, silence can be a rare form of understanding and respect. Part 2 also reinforces the story's theme of cultural and personality differences. Tala's species, with their reserved and logical nature, contrasts with Jack's human traits of openness and approachable demeanor. Yet, despite these differences, the two find common ground in their shared role as engineers. Their bond begins in the workshop, built on mutual respect for skill and dedication rather than superficial social cues. Moreover, Jack's arrival represents the classic HFY motif of humans entering alien settings and standing out, not because of aggressive dominance or technological superiority, but because of their unique combination of practicality, humility, and quiet confidence. Jack's ability to navigate this diverse environment with ease suggests a human adaptability that others may lack. This part also foreshadows the slow but steady transformation in Tala's character. The quiet companionship Jack offers is the first crack in her wall of isolation. The reader senses that this relationship will develop gradually, emphasizing the power of small, understated moments in breaking down emotional barriers. In terms of narrative structure, Part 2 serves as the catalyst. It shifts the story from a static portrait of loneliness to one of potential change. The introduction of Jack introduces tension and hope. The reader is invited to wonder how this silent companionship will affect Tala and whether it will lead to deeper connection. Finally, this part deepens the emotional engagement of the story. Tala's guarded reaction to Jack's presence mirrors real-life experiences of those who struggle with social isolation. The story resonates because it acknowledges that connection can be scary and unfamiliar, especially for those used to solitude. Yet, it also offers a hopeful message. Companionship can begin without words through simple acts of shared presence. After Jack first sits beside Tala silently in the engineering bay, the story shows that this quiet companionship does not dissipate. Instead, Jack continues to work alongside her, offering help without disrupting her focus or invading her personal space. This behavior is very telling about Jack's character and the nature of their emerging bond. Jack's approach is neither intrusive nor demanding. He doesn't force conversation or attempt to fix Tala's solitude with empty words. Instead, he demonstrates a profound understanding of personal boundaries. He respects Tala's space and rhythm. This contrasts sharply with many social interactions, where people feel compelled to fill silence with chatter, sometimes to the discomfort of those who prefer quiet. For Tala, this experience is new and gradually comforting. She is used to being alone, surrounded only by machines and technical problems. Having someone physically near, someone who shares her workspace and purpose, but who doesn't pressure her for social interaction, creates a safe space. This shared silence becomes a form of companionship that transcends language and cultural differences. This part emphasizes that communication and connection do not always require words. Jack's presence speaks volumes without uttering a sound. His occasional lending of a tool, offering a spare part, or a simple encouraging nod conveys empathy and teamwork. Tala, in turn, begins to sense that Jack is not just another crew member, but an ally, a partner who understands her needs even without explicit communication. The story uses this to highlight a broader theme, common in HFY narratives. Humans excel not only because of technology or brute force, but because of emotional intelligence, adaptability, and the ability to connect in ways that transcend cultural barriers. Jack's silent companionship is a human strength showing respect, patience, and an intuitive grasp of what another person needs. Another important element in this part is the contrast between Tala's species' reserved nature and Jack's human openness. While Tala's people prize logic and emotional control, humans often express care through action and presence rather than through words alone. Jack's quiet support subtly teaches Tala that connection can be expressed in many forms, including silence. This part also deepens the emotional tone of the story. Tala's gradual warming to Jack's presence shows how human connection can begin in the smallest gestures. The narrative invites readers to consider how often meaningful relationships form not from grand declarations, but from simple, consistent actions and shared experiences. In a practical sense, their collaboration in the engineering bay becomes a metaphor for their growing relationship. Fixing machines together symbolizes how Tala and Jack are, bit by bit, repairing the emotional walls around Tala. Their teamwork on technical problems mirrors the building of trust and understanding between them. The story also hints at Tala's internal changes. While she doesn't yet speak or openly express feelings, her acceptance of Jack's presence suggests the beginning of vulnerability, a willingness to let someone into her life. This is significant because it marks a departure from her previous state of complete isolation. Moreover, this part foreshadows future developments. The reader senses that silence and shared work will lead to dialogue and deeper connection. The stage is set for Tala to break through her emotional barriers, not because Jack forces it, but because his steady companionship invites it. By emphasizing nonverbal communication, the story explores how different cultures and individuals connect despite language or personality differences. This is especially relevant in a multicultural, multi-species setting like the Virescent, where verbal communication might be complicated by language barriers or differing social customs. Ultimately, Part 3 champions the idea that sometimes the most profound understanding happens without words. Jack's silent presence teaches Tala that companionship can be quiet and still powerful. This reinforces the story's message that humanity's greatest strength lies not only in technology or might, but in empathy, patience, and the ability to connect across divides. Up until this point, Tala has been a figure of quiet strength and solitude, defined by her preference for machines over social interaction. Jack's consistent wordless presence has chipped away at her defenses, creating a safe environment where she can begin to let her guard down. The act of Tala speaking first, hesitantly asking why Jack never talks, is profoundly significant. It marks the start of Tala moving from emotional isolation to tentative engagement. Her question, "Why don't you say anything?" is loaded with meaning. It shows that Tala has been observing Jack carefully and is curious about his silence. More importantly, it reveals her uncertainty and perhaps a fear of being misunderstood. She has lived in silence for so long that breaking it is a moment of risk and vulnerability. This question opens a door to human warmth and connection. Jack's response, "Sometimes words get in the way. Sometimes just being there is enough," encapsulates a central theme of the story: value of presence over empty chatter. His words reflect a deep understanding of companionship that transcends mere conversation. For Jack, silence is not a void but a space filled with mutual respect and comfort. This philosophy contrasts with many social norms where silence can be uncomfortable or seen as avoidance. This exchange is also a cultural and emotional bridge. Tala's people may communicate primarily through logic and explicit language, but Jack's perspective highlights the emotional depth that silence can hold. His response invites Tala and the reader to reconsider assumptions about connection and communication. Sometimes, the most meaningful bonds form in quiet understanding rather than constant dialogue. The story also shows how this conversation leads to further sharing. Tala begins to tell Jack about her homeworld's machines and their cold, calculated nature. Jack shares stories of Earth's noisy cities and vast oceans. These exchanges symbolize a mutual exchange of cultures and perspectives, fostering empathy and friendship. Through these stories, Tala and Jack not only learn about each other's worlds, but also begin to dismantle emotional barriers. This part emphasizes the gradual nature of emotional healing and connection. Tala does not instantly transform into an outgoing or emotionally expressive person. Instead, her growth is portrayed realistically as small steps of trust and openness. The story respects the complexity of overcoming isolation and highlights that genuine connection takes time, patience, and the willingness to be vulnerable. Jack's presence continues to be steady and non-judgmental, reinforcing the theme that true companionship respects boundaries while gently encouraging growth. He does not push Tala to speak more than she is comfortable with, but his openness invites her to share at her own pace. This dynamic models healthy interpersonal relationships based on respect and empathy. The emotional resonance of this part also lies in its universality. Many readers can relate to the fear of opening up after prolonged isolation or emotional distance. Tala's hesitation, courage, and the comfort she finds in Jack's response mirror real human experiences of loneliness and the gradual process of building trust. Additionally, the story highlights the uniqueness of human social skills and emotional intelligence, a common HFY motif. Jack's ability to sit with Tala in silence and then respond with such a meaningful, yet simple, explanation shows a kind of emotional wisdom that other species aboard the ship may lack. This reinforces the idea that humans, despite their imperfections, possess an innate strength in connecting with others. Narratively, Part 4 serves as the emotional climax of the story. It shifts the relationship from silent companionship to genuine dialogue, from distance to closeness. This moment of breaking barriers is what sets the stage for the final resolution, where Tala no longer feels isolated but embraced. Finally, the part closes with a sense of hope and possibility. Tala's tentative steps toward connection suggest that her future will be different. The story leaves readers with the message that even the most reserved and isolated individuals can find companionship and healing through patience, respect, and shared presence. Throughout the story, Tala's identity had been tightly bound to her role as an engineer, a solver of mechanical problems, a master of machines, and someone who found solace in the cold, predictable logic of technology. Part 5 emphasizes how, through her relationship with Jack, Tala begins to rediscover herself not just as a technician, but as a person capable of emotional connection and belonging. The narrative highlights the visible changes in Tala's demeanor noticed by others. On the Virescent, crew members who once saw her as distant and unapproachable now observe moments of warmth, subtle smiles, relaxed body language, and occasional laughter. These outward signs signal a profound internal shift. Tala is no longer defined solely by her technical skills or her solitary habits. She has grown into someone who embraces companionship and connection. Jack's presence remains steady and reassuring. His consistent companionship, marked by respect and patience, helped Tala break free from the barriers she had built around herself. The story's quiet power lies in the way it shows how small, unassuming acts like sitting silently beside someone can foster deep bonds over time. This portrayal underscores a central HFY theme. Humanity's greatest strength often lies in empathy, patience, and the ability to connect emotionally. The story also touches on how this bond between Tala and Jack acts as a bridge between cultures and species aboard the starship. In a setting filled with diverse beings, communication is complex and misunderstandings are common. Tala and Jack's relationship shows that connection does not require a perfect shared language or customs, but can be built through respect and shared experience. This message celebrates the unifying power of empathy in a fractured, multicultural environment. A particularly poignant moment in this part is when Tala thanks Jack with a simple nod and the words, "No words needed." This statement encapsulates the entire story's message, that sometimes words are unnecessary when there is genuine understanding and presence. It reflects Tala's acceptance of this new form of companionship, one based on mutual respect and silent support rather than constant conversation or verbal affirmation. The final imagery of the story, with Tala no longer feeling isolated as stars stretch endlessly outside the viewport, symbolizes her emotional and social awakening. Space, vast and often isolating, is no longer a metaphor for loneliness, but a backdrop for new beginnings and connection. Tala's transformation is complete. She has found someone who sits beside her, not just physically but emotionally, turning her solitude into shared presence. This ending also reinforces the idea that Personal transformation can come from the most unexpected places and people. Jack, an unassuming human engineer, entered Tala's life without fanfare or grand gestures. Yet his quiet companionship changed her world. It reflects a broader HFY motif that humans bring unique qualities like adaptability, kindness, and emotional insight that profoundly affect those around them, even in alien environments. From a narrative perspective, Part 5 offers resolution and hope. It closes the story's emotional arc by showing that isolation can be overcome and that true companionship is possible across cultural and personal boundaries. The story leaves readers with a warm, optimistic feeling that even in the vastness of space and the complexity of multicultural life, human connection remains a vital, healing force. The story's message is universal. Loneliness is a common human experience, but so is the longing for connection. Tala's journey from solitude to silent companionship and then to genuine friendship resonates because it mirrors real human emotions and social challenges. It also celebrates how humans can offer empathy and presence, quietly changing lives simply by choosing to be there for another.